Started. I'm going to start just by welcoming all of you to the 2020 Virtual National Student Parent Support Symposium. My name is Steph Charles, and I am the graduate assistant for the C Campus program underneath the Access Collaborative program at Ohio State. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. Before we get started, I'm going to briefly share with you a little bit about the Access program at OSU. The Access program is an academic and social support program that assists parenting students who are pursuing a college degree at The Ohio State University. We offer a variety of services to the parenting students in our program, such as programming on parenting and life skills, childcare, housing assistance, and scholarship opportunities. Since 2005, our program has organized and offered the National Student Parent Support Symposium, with the purpose of bringing together students, community, and higher education professionals to discuss best practices when supporting post-secondary parenting students and their families. The SPSS focuses on how to empower this unique college population while helping them overcome barriers that may keep them from graduating. Although this is an abbreviated and virtual version of the SPSS, we hope that it will still be just as impactful. With that being said, I would now like to introduce our facilitators for today's session. This evening we have with us Jillian Deesan, Naomi Lindsey, and Jasmine Wooten, who are all members of Ohio State student organization Students with Children. The goal of today's session is for you all to engage in networking and community building activities with other parenting students across the nation. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome to our session Jillian, Naomi, and Jasmine and let them take over.
Hi, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and start the presentation. Before we dive into what we're doing, I would like my co-presenters to go ahead and introduce themselves. So Naomi.
Hi, everybody. I hope you guys are all staying safe and healthy. My name's Naomi Lindsey. I am the vice president of the student organization, and my major is social work with a minor in criminology. I have one child. His name is Dominic years old, and I said his name is Dominic years old. I'm sorry. His name is Dominic, and he is 6 years old. So a little fun fact about me is I really love to write poetry. It's something that I used to dabble in, but I'm like obsessed with it. And another thing is I'm like a grown-up child, and I'm obsessed with Disney World, and I think I'm a mermaid in real life. It's something fun about me. And then I guess I'm going to pass it to Jasmine.
Jasmine, you're muted. If you could unmute your mic, please.
My bad, everybody. I'm Jasmine Wooten. I am the treasurer of the Students with Children org. I am pursuing my undergrad in social work here at OSU, and I have two little rascals. Naomi, you don't mess me up. My daughter Naomi, who is 8 years old, and my son Arius, who is 5 years old. And a fun fact about me is that I love musicals and painting.
And at this point, many of you have seen me 1,000 times or gotten my emails. But for those of you who haven't, my name is Jillian Deesan. I'm a graduate student currently studying ed policy, but I'm a graduate student for Access Collaborative program. In addition to being a graduate student and the Access, grad student, I'm also a mom. This is my son, Jalil, that you're looking at. He's turned 3 years old about 2 weeks ago. And many of you actually saw him last year at the symposium too. So he's a ball of joy, and he will stay out of this conversation as long as the TV is on. So let's hope for no cartoon commercial breaks. So one fun fact about me is that I can play 2 instruments. I can play the saxophone and violin, and I have for probably like 12 years. It's just something to do. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and move into our presentation. And this presentation is following the lines of social capital for student parents. And we're going to discuss how we mobilize parenting students into advocacy. And this advocacy may look like advocating for themselves, for their students, for their children, or for the population and institutions. So the way this started for us is this past year, we started a student org. And that student org is called Students with Children at The Ohio State University. It's a registered student organization with Miss Tracy as the advisor. And with that organization, we've done some pretty cool things that I'm going to, spell out for you. And Naomi and Jasmine are going to help me talk about those things and also other examples of mobilizing students. So in this presentation, how we mobilized, what came about from mobilizing student parents, and towards the end, we're going to get back into a little breakout session just to do some brainstorming about other ways to mobilize student parents. So it's a little wordy of a slide, but what we are, so we're just a student-led, student parent-led registered student organization where we kind of operate as an extension of the Access Collaborative program. Most of our body members of our organization are from Access. Even if they're not from the parenting support programming, they might be from our C campus portion or from a different portion of Access. But that's the bulk of our member makeup. However, with this organization, we've been able to use word of mouth, social media, and different email outreaches to reach beyond Access, which has helped not only support student parents, but find student parents on campus. In some of our previous sessions, we've discussed how hard it is to sometimes get the numbers and the data about what student parents you have here. And this has been a tool to start reaching other people and maybe then connecting them with Access or the resources that are available on our campus. And why are we doing these things? We all know parents and students have time debt. We're struggling to balance school, life, parenting, all those things. It's a lot of work. And what even came up, I think, in one of the earlier sessions is that it's hard to keep a student organization going. And we're only going into year 2. So hopefully we'll go through and, become very stable. But we're doing these things because, for one, it's increasing our visibility on campus. So by becoming a registered student org, it puts us into the Ohio State Student Org database. Now, someone can, as a new student, as a current student, as someone looking for research, they can quickly go into our student org base, type in student parent, parenting student, all those tags, and we pop up. We are now visible to people who are on our campus. It also helps us because it gives student parents opportunity for leadership. So student parents often don't have an opportunity to become the vice presidents, the treasurers, and those kinds of things in traditional student orgs on our campus because they have late meeting times. They meet more frequently and things like that. So we don't meet as frequently. We meet maybe 2 to 3 times a semester. And those typically happen in very strategic events. So maybe one family event a semester, one advocacy meeting, which is a big part of our student org. It's important to have representation in these student government spaces because that's how we can make change and actually influence policy on our campus and be representative and recognize that we're there. So this platform mobilized us. It gave us a seat at the student government table. And when I say that, because our student org is operating at a 4-year institution, we're touching the student government for undergrads, graduates, and the IPC, which is the professional students. We're able to mobilize through all those student bodies, which then still feed into our school's Senate and can actually facilitate policy change at the faculty level. And if it's not policy change, it just influences them and teaches them that we are there. This year, through also just being visible and being there, because our university is undergoing some changes in respect to student family housing, we were able to be there and to encourage them to develop a multi-department task force. That task force we've been meeting since December, after many conversations with many different folks to say we need to have a big sit down, including student life, including different provosts, including different entities at the university, who need to understand what student parents need, and understand that more change has to come, because we have the Access Collaborative program, and actually that's it for our university. And for a university that serves about 66,000 students, that's not enough. Additionally, I want to pass this over to Naomi, because they really focused on her pretty much. But having this student org put a light on student parents, which led to us having some newspaper coverage on a campus-wide 30-year-old newspaper, which we have a lot of momentum on campus. This was a perfect time to release this newspaper focusing on student parents. So Naomi, it's all you.
So what you said was actually really perfect. There's something I was going to say. So with the org, it really increased our visibility, and the Lantern came at such a pivotal time, especially with the things with Buckeye Village and everything. I feel like the Lantern article really pushed us out and said, hey, we are here, and you guys don't always see us all the time sometimes. And I think we were able to really reach certain audiences and really educate them more about our experiences as being a single parent, or being a parent in general, and trying to go to school, the hardships that we face with that, and the benefits we also have. I think the Lantern was such a good article, and I was really happy that the org, without the creation of the organization, this article would have never been done, and we wouldn't had such a progress be made with the organization without the newspaper article.
And in making this presentation, I think what came up in our brainstorming was the idea of how we are making a seat at the table. And if you're an RBN fan, Solange has a whole album about this, making a seat at the table. But sometimes it's hard to make that seat. And so we found this quote by Shirley Chisholm that says, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I think for us, that might be bring 2 or 3 folding chairs. If you got you and your kiddo who needs to sit down too, bring the laptop too, bring the leap pad too, bring a book, bring some toys, bring whatever you need to get to those meetings and to get to those spaces to make sure your voice is heard. And sometimes your voice doesn't have to be audible. It can just be you sitting there with your kid, you intently watching this networking discussion that's happening at your student union with a big company that partners with the institution to recruit people. Sitting there in that room, in that space, indicates we are here at this institution. And most people who at least work in public ed understand that there's a need for equity in students, especially when you talk about low income, first generation, and demographics that are underrepresented and underserved. They recognize and they see we have student parents here. Now they can begin having that conversation. So moving forward, I want us to think about how can we, if you're a student, how do I pick up my folding chair and take it? And if I'm a support person for these students, how do I teach them how to pick that chair up and scoop people over, do it politely, do it with respect and dignity in a professional way, and say, this is our table. We're going to sit here with you too. So Jasmine, I would love for you to go ahead and share some information about one example, which is the Dr. James L. Morse III Scholars Program.
Yes, so the Dr. James L. Moore III Scholars Program is a student development initiative focused on serving underrepresented transfer students from community colleges. It provides support in further developing study skills, leadership skills, financial literacy. It really helps mobilize parenting students, because as a non-traditional student myself, who graduated and transferred from a community college, programs like the Dr. James L. Moore III Scholars Program have been extremely beneficial and supportive. It's helped, kind of build a sense of community for me and ease the possible anxieties prompted by transferring to such a large university like Ohio State.
All right, so another good program that's out there is Ready to Work. It's a Kentucky-based program, and I was in it because I just moved here in August from good old sweet Kentucky. This program really helps student parents because it's just made for student parents. That's it. They help you with your benefits, such as you can work and you're not penalized for working. They do a job placement where it's geared to your major. So for me, my major is social work, and I was the Salvation Army assistant to the social worker. So I had really good experience from that. And also they give you the tools to advocate for yourself and for your children. And this is how they really help mobilize you into advocacy and other departments you need to be into, because they mentor you and they work with you to get you to where you need to be by the time you leave their institution.
Yes, sorry. So parenting students really do encourage policy change around local communities and around the universities. These are several articles in the PowerPoint that have student parents speaking to Congress on behalf of the experiences of parenting students, as well as just kind of highlighting the experiences of parenting students to apply for grants and to initiate changes around different campuses. The links will be provided in the PowerPoint at the end, but being involved in outreach and having our experiences highlighted like this reassures parenting students that our voices and experiences matter and are being heard to help implement inclusive programs around our local communities and around the universities. And it really makes an impact on us.
So before we move on, I want to make sure I do a temperature check to see if anybody has questions about the presentation material. It's small groups, so if you want to chime in or if you want to put in the group chat, that's fine too.
We love questions.
If not, that's okay. We will simply move on. So Naomi's going to introduce our breakout session.
Yes. Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So, I know, I'm not sure you all will talk about this, but I'm interested to hear a little bit about like this past semester.
Oh,
how
yeah.
that went for you all, but like I said, we can talk about that later. So
I think that's okay to talk about now.
okay.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start real quick. So, I had 5 classes, and one of them was a lab to do all at home while trying to be a renowned kindergarten teacher, which I sometimes wanted to send him to Jillian's house, but I couldn't do that because we're on lockdown. But I think for me this semester, it pushed me in ways that I didn't know I could go, in a sense. I didn't think I was this good to do online classes. I always hated them. I've always tried to avoid them. but it really showed me that if something, I can face things head on and I can do it, but also it's challenging in a way because going to school was like my little break, as you so say. As parents, we look forward to those little 2 minutes in the shower, 2 minutes to go to school and I think it was challenging to get him out of his normal and trying to find our new normal for now. I think it was a very challenging semester, but I found out a lot about myself as a parent and as a student that I really enjoyed. So I'll let someone else go.
I'll piggyback on that. It definitely was a transition. I think it put my resilience to the test and my resourcefulness and my patience. It kind of just challenged me over every aspect of my identity as a mom. So yeah, it was definitely very challenging, and it still is, just kind of getting back to a routine and a schedule, and trying to get back to a sense of normalcy and managing, you know, with the state reopening, you know, how we're going to protect our health and our children's health looking forward. It's made me more mindful to look forward, because now I'm focused on what's going to happen in the fall. Like how can I stay up to date on what people are talking about? What should I prepare for, opposed to just being blindsided like we all were when everything shut down. So it's just been a really good time for self-reflection and growth, and yeah, just challenging myself.
I appreciate their comments and their feels, because I think it's definitely a little, like, I don't know that it's different as a grad student. I know for me, shifting to this virtual existence at home, it's extremely difficult. I think I could handle the virtual existence still in a work setting, but doing it at home has been pretty challenging. I'm still sitting with the incomplete on a class because it's a 30-page paper that has to be done, and it requires, you know, extensive research, and I don't have extensive research time of just sitting with my computer to do all the things I need to do. Because I also have work requirements, and some of our work requirements are sitting on videos and talking with each other and getting things planned. And by like 2 hours on the computer, my eyes hurt. So, and it's only so long that PBS is going to be a good babysitter. So it's challenging. I think it's a good question. And looking forward, I think it will be interesting to see what happens come the fall, because I don't know that we're going to go back. And I don't know that I personally can do 12 credits of grad school stuff online. Someone said law school online. I've heard that's extremely intense. I can't imagine doing that with a kiddo. So kudos to you, Michaela.
I was just going to say that, like, go Michaela. Like, you're doing great to do law school online. Like, woo! Go, I'm proud of you. That's awesome.
So real fast, and then we'll go to the breakout session, because I like to keep the questions kind of as they come in, we answer them. Lissa, thank you for joining from Michigan. We recently connected virtually. So you said, how are you approaching the community aspect of your org now, and also going forward if things stay virtual?
Ooh.
So as an organization, that has been something we've discussed, because we recognize after maybe 5 classes a week virtual of maybe 3-hour sessions, say we're back in the fall and people have 5 classes and they're 3 hours each. How do we convince student parents to sit on another video call? How do we convince them to, want to do that? And how do we just make it feasible? Because we all know we have requirements at home. If the kids are home in the fall, you're making 3 meals a day. That is a lot, because you got to clean it up. They bring it around the house. Now you got to vacuum. It's too much. So we've created a Facebook page, which was, made a quicker tool of communication, because I try not to check emails after a certain time in the day. nor on weekends, because it's so much throughout the week. So using Facebook has been pretty helpful. Doing small little impromptu watch parties, or doing the Netflix parties, which aren't as convenient as they sound. The Facebook ones are a little easier. That's been the tool that we've kind of been utilizing. Going forward, we're still trying to be innovative about it. Do we want to do a social distancing yoga at the park on campus? Something that is fruitful, but also recognizing that not everyone's going to be on Facebook.
No.
So we're still figuring that out in our own planning phases. Lissa, I know you're in the beginning stages of this developing your guys' program on campus. So thank you for being here.
So we're gonna do a breakout session, everybody. And with the breakout session, we're gonna have a discussion. So it's gonna be a community discussion. So we would love for you to think of 2 to 3 ways you can help parenting students mobilize into advocacy. So Julian's going to break us out in groups. And in about 10 minutes, we'll come back and discuss what we discussed in groups. It's really a good way for you just to think like, okay, well, at my college, we could do this, or I can implement this program for them. And it's just a cool discussion to have.
I'm getting it all together there, y'all.
Oh, wait,
We'll come back to that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll hold that
Okay.
when we come back. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right, it seems like we have everybody back. There's a poll that popped up. Thank you guys for answering that. We have about 17 minutes left. You guys are doing great. It's been a long day if you've been here with us since the first session. This is starting to feel very much more closer to how the symposium flows. Those jam-packed days. So Jasmine, if you could lead us in this post-breakout discussion. I'm gonna share these results so you can see what people are feeling. I took some notes as I popped in, but you can run with it.
So in our breakout session, you know, a lot of people brought up some great points, specifically about reiterating that the emotional retelling of our experiences to our instructors and how much that can weigh on us as students. And so we just kind of brainstorm some ideas as such as, you know, sending out an introduction to your professors prior to the semester starting, kind of informing them that you are a parenting student and, you know, what supports you may need as a student. Also, confronting your professors if needed, if you don't feel as if they're supporting you as a student parent, if they're kind of lumping you into just the broad section of a student, as well as, you know, just recognizing, getting reassurance that our experiences aren't burdensome, and when we do bring our seat to the table, that we aren't that we're being heard and that we're not going to be perceived as some type of nuisance.
I really like the ideas you just presented because those are pretty cool. And I almost could immediately think of one more way to help. You mentioned sending an email to our professors kind of before the semester starts, mentioning some of the things that we bring to the table as a student, being kids and the responsibilities that come with. I wonder if institutionally, this like for student orgs, if we develop a letterhead for that we provide to our students with some, like, you know, almost verbiage and solidarity to display to the professors and all that. If they're getting 5 letters and they're the same letter of student parents, it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's cool. Let's definitely meet about that. I like that idea.
Yeah, I offer that as an example because Miss Melissa mentioned that, you know, it was frustrating retelling all your professors, and I said, you know, before the semester begins, I tell all of them in this, you know, separate emails, but all the same emails, that you know, I'm a student parent, what my goals are for the course, and what supports I may be seeking around the university as well, so they can see that I'm dedicated to my education, that I may be experiencing some barriers, but that I'm also seeking support, so they don't perceive me as just a student that's trying to essentially get sympathy, because I am a parenting student. So.
So Naomi, what were some things that were discussed in your group?
Oh, we had some good ones. So we talked about, let me go back to my mini page of notes that I was trying to write fast. We spoke to Jane. She was really sweet. I loved her. She was really nice. She was talking about how they're having struggles with having like trying to figure out how to go on with like their programming and separating, having a section for like the kiddos and everything, and because it's hard for them to concentrate as parents. And I was like, yeah, in my head I'm thinking like, I agree, because it's hard for us to concentrate on one thing when we have now, it's like we have like 15,000 things behind us, especially with this whole COVID situation. And then we were talking about how different schools have different policies with student parents, such as Autumn was sharing about, I hope I don't say this wrong, Autumn, please chime in if I do, Rutgers, New Jersey. Remember, it's in New Jersey. Rutgers, New Jersey, how she had to help them get a voice for their school. And we also shared about mental health, and I was sharing about how we need to check in on mental health, and that's a big thing. I think that's the social work in me coming out. But we need to really, I was talking about how we need to check on mental health and maybe even putting out a survey to see what their student parents' needs are. What do they need to have resources? Like what kind of resources are needed right in this time, or doing therapy and trying to find a therapist for them. And then Stephanie shared about C Campus and how they're doing education, like the daycare issues with how do you move forward with daycares, because some of them are opening, but some of them have restrictions a little bit. So we shared a lot about those stuff.
I like that you bring up being concerned with the mental health and the health aspect of the parenting student. And I think it's also valid to maybe propose, it would be valid, like it might help to also provide programming for parenting students who also have students with different mental and health things going on.
Amen. That would be, I'm over here like, yes.
Because it ranges, but understanding that it's an added barrier, which it starts to separate as a barrier that's not related to higher ed and is more part of those wraparound services. But that's what most of us do anyway. So sometimes paying those parenting students a little extra love, I think, helps. I popped in a couple times to the first breakout room, and that had Jessica in it and Amy was in there. Do either of you want to share what you guys discussed?
Well, we basically focused on how schools are responding to the COVID-19 issue. Just kind of some best practices that you've been using with your students. So we didn't honestly really get to the question at hand. We got a little bit caught up on just sharing best practices. So a lot of the responses were just making sure that you're staying connected with your students throughout this time, and just making yourself as much as available as possible to your students, just to let them know that you're here if needed. Stacy, I know you shared a little bit more. I was not taking notes. I was not prepared to report out. So I don't know if you feel comfortable with sharing a little bit about what you said you were doing at your university.
Sure. So I'm with Bowling Green State University, Firelands campus. And it was one of our students last year who transferred down to Ohio State and came to me. I do the fundraising for our university. So she's the one that she was looking for resources and wondering if her scholarship went with her. And that's how I found Tracy Lewis and found your amazing program, and did not even know that this whole world existed. So we're trying to do something here. And so right now, as we're trying to build, and one of our awesome students, Lauren, is on this call right now too, with her little guy. We were able to use, we had a donor who got really excited hearing that we're just planning this, and she gave us money at the end of last year. And so when COVID hit, we're still building a program, but it gave us funds available to help students who are parents with dependent kids in these emergency funds before the federal funding came in. And it kind of created this separate pot of money for us to be able to help them with the living essentials for rent, for food, for utilities. So our area where we live is, we're an hour from Toledo, we're an hour from Cleveland. We have exactly one cable provider in this area, and they are crazy expensive. And so one of the things we found, for example, was so many of our students do not have any internet access at home. So expecting that they could just do their courses online didn't work. So we were doing a lot of that type of work. And on top of that, we did a whole outreach effort to all of our students, but a little special emphasis to our students who are parents with dependent kids, of personal phone calls 3 times in the semester since they went home, just to check in on them. And so for most students, it was, how are the classes going? How are your faculty responding to you? Do you need help? What can we do to help? For our students who are parents, it was the added, like, how are the kids doing? You know, how are you doing with their schoolwork? How are you managing your time? What can we do to help you and support you in that way?
Thanks for sharing that, Stacy. I'm glad to hear you guys are getting funding even before a big program's launching. That's a big step. Funding makes everything a little easier.
Did you see in the chat?
Yes, I saw that question. I also want to go back a little bit to Jane's question. I don't know if this got answered in the breakout, but it was right before we broke out. Jane had asked, how can we get children to stay focused with their studies with the shelter in place? And that kind of, Autumn Green kind of mentioned it at the tail end of it, but she said that they've been doing virtual babysitting. We kind of did something similar here where because I'm a licensed teacher and I was already being, paid as the GA, I offered tutoring sessions 4 times a week and just had the opportunity for kids to sit on for an hour. It gives them the teachers a minute or the parents a minute. What was that, Jane? I saw Jane unmuted, so I didn't know.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I also talked about that on our breakout session, what Family Resource Center and City College of San Francisco were doing to help parents at this time, because all of us know it's a difficult time, and the only thing we can do is to support and help them transition to this, because kids are all over them now, because it's like before, students would go to school and parents would just concentrate on their studies, but now kids are at home, so it's a very difficult time. So we, as I said in our breakout session, had the way we do it to separate the kids from their parents. So we do sections for the kids and different sections for the parents to support. So that's what we did, and I'm glad my supervisor, who is the coordinator of the program, is also here. Her name is Tracy. She's right there on this platform right now. So that's what we are doing, and it's really great because it's a difficult time for them and for everyone else. So that's all we can do to support.
I appreciate you sharing, because I think that's a tool that we might be discussing in a C campus session tomorrow, wink, wink, about how to try to manipulate funding to pay for teaching or childcare or things like that virtually. So we'll be back here at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So I know, Naomi, you were ready to go back to this question that was posed by Michaela about student org.
Oh, yeah. So for my experience with this question, which I will read the question. She said, I have a question surrounding the decision to have a separate org for student parents rather than integrating or pushing for inclusion in existing organizations. So I am also the vice president of a social work club called Moana Funzi. And for me, that I found the most difficult trying to join other orgs is they'll have their meetings, but they'll have them at night. So Dominic has ADHD, so it's kind of like a strict schedule for us. Like if we found that if we're not on schedule with bedtime, everything, the whole day's a mess. So I found for me, it was hard to go to a meeting at 7:30, 8 o'clock when it's supposed to be bedtime, dinner, I'm already cleaning the kitchen, you know what I mean? I found that, and it's also some orgs push really to go out in my experiences, where it's kind of hard to just find a babysitter every Saturday just so you can have a connection with somebody and be a part of something. I think it was important to have our own because it gives us power in numbers, if that makes sense. I think it's kind of like there's a group of us and we are here and you guys ignore us for a very long time. And I think it's more about visibility also, that we're here, we deserve respect just like you. So
If I could also add,
Just a little bit of background on that. So I was in, student government. I also was vice chair at Oregon State University's Family Services Advisory Board. So we also did like support groups, and we had those kind of institutionalized student parent kind of connections and gatherings and did things in that respect. But also while I was on ASOSU and in general, one of the things I found was that I didn't think that it was right to not push for them to be inclusive. So like, with technology, I was able to convince them that I could video call in. So on days when they didn't feel like they'd put me on speakerphone, so I could be at home during those meetings. Or we have a lot of multicultural centers. We have 8, and we were able to get them to implement toy boxes in each of the centers so that folks that wanted to utilize the centers would be able to feel like they could still go to events, even if they had children, if they wanted to bring their children. And so sometimes like I get, I guess, maybe nervous around the idea of like only having it kind of separate and not really like really pushing student governments have got to be more inclusive and other organizations to be more parent friendly, rather than feeling like we have to go to the outskirts of the university to start our own thing, which I think is really powerful. But I also really liked that at points I had other folks that would advocate for student parents that weren't student parents. Like the Cesar Chavez Center was fantastic. And every time they went into faculty, they had student parents on their mind, even though that wasn't their, like primary focus. And so I just was kind of curious as to if there are other ways in which people are pushing for further inclusion in other works also.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry.
No, you guys are great. I think that was a good clarification, Michaela, because I when I read the question, I read it differently.
I did too. Sorry. Yeah, I was like,
but I want to add on top, other than pushing in, one other reason we found, what I found at least, was needed to have a separate org aside from like access and all those things that they do, is because our program operates as a academic unit. So it's an institutional unit that has to abide by all university regulations. The student org doesn't. We have to abide by student org regulations, which are a lot looser because we have a different funding pot, if that makes sense. So that was one reason that I pushed to have a student org separate. It also was a little more enticing for some of the graduate students who may be international students and don't meet some of the necessary requirements to get funding and to get opportunities that are offered by, thank you, our institutional office, right? So that's why we kind of started that. Jasmine, I'm gonna let you take this last question before we wrap up, so we try to stay close to time. Melissa asked, what advice would you give to get a student org started?
I think some advice that I would give to get a student org started would be to kind of gauge your audience, get a group of people, put outreach to other people, like-minded people that would be willing to join and also advocate for your student org. Reach out to the university itself and look up other student orgs and see kind of how they're maneuvering around the challenges that COVID-19 are now facing, presenting, as well as, what requirements there are for your student org. We really kind of we needed some things, we had some initiatives in mind, and we needed to become visible. The student org offered a lot of flexibility, as well as we were able to see on campus that there were other orgs like the Dr. James L. Moore III Scholars Program that were willing to also bring us to the table and hear our voices and implement, initiatives that would help serve parenting students. So Melissa, I think, just kind of gauging your university, seeing what other orgs are doing, making sure that there's also not another org that wants to do kind of the same thing that you do, and gaining a momentum with a group, putting a group together. I think that would be very helpful.
Yep, I agree. And I put in the chat too, just start, meet the bare minimum requirements for the organizations that are needed by your institution, and just start it. Like, even if you guys don't meet all the requirements, because our institution requires 2 events every semester. Our first semester, we didn't do that because we were still getting some different people in the positions and figuring out the trainings and all the things. But the upcoming year, we're like, okay, we have a better grasp of this. We're going to try more and do more. And if nothing else, we still here. We holding on. We here. We have a little website that we've made. You know, we've increased visibility. If someone were to Google students with children or a parenting student, they'll find something associated with our university. And it's just that matter of like, you just have to step in and go. Even if you have students who are really apprehensive about it because they're nervous and scared about the responsibility, let them know, hey, we understand you're a parenting student, so are we. We'll be okay. Let's just try this.
Yeah. It's a lot of brainstorming and it's a lot of just challenging yourself because all of us have a million things on our plates and none of us want to add anything else. But at the same time, if our end goal is to be seen and heard around the university, so inclusive programs are made and they're accessible to us, you know, somebody has to put the work in.
Yep. All right, y'all. With that, we are going to close out because it is now 6:04 and I have held you over for 4 extra minutes. I wish it was longer too. We are learning from going forward. We are learning that we will have to have some longer sessions. But thank you for joining us. What I will say is we will be having some different monthly sessions coming after Symposium. So be on the lookout for that. And for the folks who are student parent champions, when we have sessions, share them with your parenting students because they can, you know, it can never hurt for them to go into these meetings and learn more about who's doing what they're doing for their population, or what work goes into it, especially if you have social work folks like 2 of my e-board people, they're all into this. Jasmine wants to be like one of you guys one of these days. So
I'll get there.
You will get there.
You'll get there. So, you know, feel free to share all of our content. We're going to post some of this information. I'm going to chop some of this video because I don't want to include all of you guys' personal faces. I didn't get clearance for that. I respect your privacy. So we will include the first half of this recording, the presentation portion, for later viewing. I hope to see you all tomorrow at our last session for this little mini symposium at 11 a.m. Eastern time with Haley Myers-Dillon, focusing only on C Campus. I know there's been a lot of C Campus childcare questions, and that is what's coming for tomorrow. So if you have all, I'm getting called. The TV went off. We will see you folks tomorrow. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.